This field trip is to Myriad Botanical Gardens in Oklahoma City, and it's directed for second grade. It incorporates the Oklahoma Academic Science Standard of 2.LS 2.1, which is plan and conduct an investigation to determine if plants need sunlight and water to grow. This standard incorporates the science and engineering practice of planning and carrying out investigations. It also incorporates the cross-cutting concept of cause and effect, as well as the disciplinary core idea involving the idea that plants depend on water and sunlight to grow. This lesson would start out with the engage portion, obviously, and for this we would be going to the Myriad Botanical Gardens in Oklahoma City. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a map of where it is in relation to Oklahoma City. It's about an hour away from Norman, so not too far. And within the museums, the students would be participating in one of their mini workshops called Blooming Bulb Botany. So within this workshop, museum staff would give students kind of an inside look at different types of bulbs at different stages of growth. So they'd be seeing them from when the bulbs are planted in the soil from the very start all the way until they're full grown plants. They would be able to see kind of that timeline to see how they grow. They would also be shown different bulbs growing under different conditions. So this includes varying levels of sunlight and water. So within this, students would be challenged to kind of see the differences between how bulbs grow in different amounts of sunlight and water, kind of getting them familiar with that phenomenon of certain bulbs growing in water versus no water, sunlight versus no sunlight. And finally, they would be directed through kind of an investigation to see the anatomy of the bulb. So they would be dissecting the bulbs, really kind of seeing what they look like on both the inside and the outside, and comparing and contrasting the different parts and characteristics of different types of bulbs. And then as kind of a wrap up to this portion of the lesson, students would be directed by museum staff on how to plant a bulb. They would be planting their own bulb, and then they would be able to take it home and nurture it, water it, expose it to sunlight, and watch it grow. And this is where we go into the explore phase of the lesson, which takes place back in the classroom. So for this portion of the lesson, students would be carrying out an investigation to investigate how sunlight and water affect the growth of a plant. And they would be using their bulbs from the museum field trip to conduct this investigation. So students would be placed in groups of 4 students. Each group would receive 4 bulbs, so each student would contribute their own bulb to the group investigation. And then over the course of 2 weeks, the students would watch the 4 different plants grow. Now, there would be different conditions for each plant, and as you can see in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, there are each plant is going to receive a different amount of sunlight and water. And those are going to be sort of like the variables for the investigation. So for example, plant 1 will receive both sunlight and water. Plant 2 will receive no sunlight, but plenty of water. Plant 3 will receive sunlight, but no water. And plant 4 will receive neither sunlight or water. So over the course of 2 weeks, students will track the growth of these 4 plants. They will be required to collect data each day, record their data in their science notebooks. They'll specifically be looking at qualitative and quantitative data. So this would be things like measuring the height of each of the plants, observing the color, maybe even the texture of the leaves of each plant. And then they would also be counting the number of the leaves and just kind of taking general notes and observations based on what they're noticing about how each plant is progressing through growth. So after 2 weeks of observations and data collections, we would move into the explain portion of the lesson. And for this, we would be conducting, specifically the teacher would be facilitating a discussion about the findings and observations that the students gathered throughout the 2 weeks of the investigation. The teacher would be focusing on things like the conditions, which conditions did the plants grow best in, how did the students know which plants grew the best. They would also be kind of dissecting the data, thinking about the specific heights of all 4 plants, the specific colors that they recorded, the numbers of leaves that they recorded, and kind of comparing and contrasting how these things changed or maybe didn't change throughout the 2 weeks within the 4 different plants. And then finally, the teacher would want to cover kind of what this data means. So what does this data tell us about the relationship between water, sunlight, and plants? Is there a pattern that's present? What plant was most successful? What environment was that was the most successful plant put in? And then finally, kind of what do the students think about sunlight and water, and do they think that it is important for those 2 things are important for plant growth? So during this portion, students should really be analyzing their data and using that data to develop the idea that plant and sunlight and water is very essential to plant growth. And then we kind of move into the elaborate phase. And for this, we would be going back to the Myriad Botanical Gardens. So this would be, 2-3 weeks after the first trip. This would be a second trip up there. And during this trip, they would be participating in the natural wreaths workshop. So during this workshop, museum staff would take the students through the greenhouse, specifically the Crystal Bridge Conservatory, which is sort of the centerpiece of the entire garden or museum. As you can see in the map, that's the very center of the property. And then you can also see in the photo to the left of the map, that is the inside of the conservatory. So that that includes several different kinds and species of plants. Students would have the chance to really just explore the different types of plants in there and the beauty of it and the shapes, the sizes. We would want students to have their science notebooks with them and actively be writing down their observations, maybe in the form of "I notice, I wonder" statements, be recording any kind of questions they may have. And we also want to remind them to keep in mind the investigation that they did back in the classroom with the plants, and write down any connections that they might find between that investigation and things at the Myriad Botanical Gardens. So after they take that tour, explore the greenhouse, explore the beautiful plants on the premises of the museum, students are going to have the chance to collect different trees, leaves, branches, flowers. The museum staff will have a designated space for this, so students will be able to collect different greenery in a basket, and then they will go back to a classroom in the museum, where they will have the chance to assemble and create wreaths made out of all the things that they collected. And then they'll be able to take these home and use them to decorate their classroom, or maybe take them home and decorate their homes, put them on their front doors, etc. And then after they have completed the second day at the Myriad Botanical Gardens, we'll come back to the classroom and the teacher will want to conduct some sort of an evaluation. And for this portion of the lesson, students will be evaluated on the knowledge that they learned primarily during the investigation and the things that they noticed at the at the gardens. So for this activity, students will be asked to draw a picture of the ideal environment where they are going to want to place their wreaths, whether that's at home or within the classroom. We want to get them thinking about where is their wreath going to be most successful and where is it going to last the longest. Obviously, wreaths are not living plants anymore, in the fact that they're not plants planted in soil, so they're obviously not going to last forever, but we want students to think about the types of conditions where they want their wreaths to be placed in so that they will last the longest time that they possibly can. And obviously their drawings, and within their drawings, they should depict lots of sunlight and lots of water, because they should have learned during the investigation and throughout the 2 trips to the Myriad Botanical Gardens that sunlight and water are very essential for plant success and plant growth. So instead of really, doing some sort of long written activity, students are just going to draw a picture because they are in 2nd grade, so they might not have the ability, the literacy skills to write an entire paragraph and really express their knowledge that way. This way they can just draw a picture and express their knowledge and everything that they learned throughout this lesson in the form of art, and something that's very tangible for them to accomplish. So after they have completed this portion of the lesson, the teacher will want to evaluate each student's drawing based on this rubric. So you have your criteria, your rating, and then of course the points that they will be awarded for each point of criteria. The first thing that the teacher should be grading on is, does the drawing include sunlight? And then does the drawing include water? And then just overall quality. So is it thoughtful? Did the student put in an adequate amount of effort into this assignment? So that is the lesson. That it incorporates the 2 trips to the botanical gardens, as well as an investigation to hopefully anchor everything that they would have observed and learned throughout the field trip into something tangible in the classroom.